Creating backdoor into system. Deactivating lock on vertical catapult. Connecting steam cylinders. Launching. All right, Raven. Let's get to work, shall we?
Armored Core 6 has no shortage of amazing levels to explore, from icy mountain ranges, a floating megacity shrouded in fog that doubles as a colony spaceship, completely barren wastelands, and underground facilities that stretch as far as the eye can see. Yet, despite all the stunning variety on offer, perhaps the most prominent and awe-inspiring location we get to visit is Grid 086, and all its surrounding architecture. Today we set out to explore and talk about one of the most captivating levels in the game. This colossal mega-structure not only showcases the mighty engineering feats and technological development present on Rubicon, but also serves as a testament to the artistry of From Software's game design. That being said, let's get right to it and delve into the key elements that make playing through Grid 086's environment an exceptionally memorable experience. At the heart of Grid 086 lies a sprawling industrial complex, connected to other similar grids that populate the planet's skyline. The sheer scale of this structure is awe-inspiring, composed of towering steel arches, what seem to be high-speed highways connecting each of the different hubs, and a whole array of interspersed facilities. This creates a sense of transit and grandeur that truly immerses the players in the game. It's not just a level you need to traverse and walk through from point A to point B in order to complete an assignment. It truly becomes a living, breathing testament to the resourcefulness of humanity and its own hubris, as with everything in this scale present on the planet. These monolithic behemoths perfectly exemplify just how tiny an individual person is compared to any relevant object in this setting.
Keep in mind that your AC is roughly 10 meters tall, yet this place has gates, roadways, conveyor belts, pipes and foundries much bigger than even these towering metal giants, not to mention the actual megastructure itself.
Thematically, the environment helps sell the idea that these grids are either operated completely autonomously by giant machinery, or that they are purpose-built for industrial-grade worker MTs to use at their own scale. Something that does make sense, considering just how advanced AI systems are at this point in time. Additionally, considering the absolutely massive amounts of raw material being extracted and processed from the planet's surface, having access to gargantuan refinery pipelines spawning across the whole continental landmass, to facilitate extraction of precious resources, namely coral, wouldn't be too far-fetched. To be fair, this kind of attention to detail and excruciatingly precise sense of perspective and size is displayed all throughout the game rather consistently. But for some reason or the other it really comes to life in this factory setting, rather ironically. This feeling might stem from the place's sense of familiarity, since we get to see what would be a genuinely functional working setting of a normal assembly line, except this one's built for giant people. With this it becomes much easier to relate at a human level, evoking a sort of contrast between what we are superficially looking at and what we actually perceive it to be. In many ways we could imagine ourselves walking down this complex, and understanding what the machinery's purpose would be compared to contemporary technology. So yeah, the grid is massive, absolutely colossal, but still radiating remnants of the human element, making it easily stand out from the other vast, harsh and inhospitable landscapes the events of the game take place in. Visual cohesion and art direction by themselves are a standout here, but everything really comes full circle when we take the backing composition into consideration. Dozers on the Grid is a fantastic track. It's a piece that evokes forward movement and methodical scouting paired with a sense of discovery and the unnerving unknown. The urban jungle that is Grid 086 is home to numerous ragtag independent factions, namely the Dozers, chief among them Rad. Ambushes and patrols peek just around every corner and hallway, adding further unto the cathartic pleasure of venturing further into uncharted territory. These Dozers and their repurposed scrap technology control the abandoned premises. The Grid is their turf and as such we must move carefully, since tourists are definitely not welcome here. This ambience and atmosphere is masterfully interwoven within the actual gameplay and enemy encounters along the level, elevating both Armored Core 6's pacing, world building and storytelling in a really interesting and organic way. All of these elements come together to form a beautiful melting pot of focused ideas, executed brilliantly, leaving a long-lasting impression on the player. There are many optional paths to take that are visually discreet enough as to not make them too obvious, yet just subtle enough to make them feel rewarding when you do decide to venture through. Additionally, multiple cross-sections lead to completely different areas off the beaten path, where ambushes and hidden parts can be found peppering the environment, and conditioning the player to further engage with their surroundings. There are loads of nooks and crannies to explore, often tempting ravens with log hunt rewards and special bounty enemy encounters. The level's design encourages thorough exploration, rewards curiosity, and adds several layers of depth on replayability and strategy. It shows how different builds can use their specific characteristics to their advantage, to take different routes towards the main objectives. The subsection right below the starting point of the mission is a great example of this dynamic. Instead of the usual gung-ho guns blazing approach, the game offers you the possibility to circumnavigate the imminent danger of the long-range artillery MTs guarding the upper floor, in favor of dealing with smaller groups of ambushing enemies in the lower level, which can be sniped or caught off guard by smart use of scanning. Taking this alternate route allows you to then either head straight to the invincible rummy fight, or flank the upper level from the back, making the task of eliminating these forces quite a bit easier, especially if you're looking to minimize damage taken for a challenge run. Perhaps more impressive still, after defeating Rummy, the map really opens up, and you're allowed to freely go anywhere you please. After passing through the gate, ravens arrive at a three-way crossroads, each path with a different outcome. You may choose to head straight forward, gaping a huge chasm and engaging a group of smaller MTs in order to make use of a vertical launch catapult. This leads straight into the next objective. Alternatively, one can either go right and find themselves on a dead end dealing with small fodder and collecting some extra funds, or go left and explore a completely new, missable section of the grid, where several additional objectives lie hidden. The real beauty of it is that no matter where you choose to go, every other path can be accessed organically through further exploration. Everything is interconnected as long as the player is curious enough to ask what's further beyond, instead of making a beeline towards the mission marker. Discovering the two boss tetrapods hidden in this area above the Rummy fight, just because I wandered around, was such a nice touch. It's the small things that add up and make everything feel so cohesive and purposeful. I got rewarded thematically but also tangibly in game in the form of a bounty. The same thing happened when my intrusive thoughts got the best of me and I decided to walk through a suspiciously large tube in a foundry, only to find myself ambushed by Nosak, a bounty hunter hired to eliminate me. Got some goodies and some extra tidbit of lore from an interaction that was completely hidden away from me. This is Grid 086's biggest achievement in my opinion. There's always something else waiting for you, even if it's just a beautiful vista or some extra scrap comb from a few patrolling forces, and this tug of war between player curiosity and potential reward keeps tensions high, which in turn engages us in playing through the level and paying full attention to it.
I love that bit when you can actually bait and trigger an explosive trap that was meant for you, only to watch it decimate the rad squad that was guarding the gate. I like watching them burn.
Okay Abby, chill. Speaking of rad, Chapter 2 is all about them and their awesome boss lady Cinder Carla. Throughout your visit of the grid you'll be greeted by Carla constantly teasing you over the comms, whilst you make your way through Rad's defenses in quite the spectacular fashion. Rad stands for reuse and development. They're a black market weapons dealer faction, notorious for repurposing other companies' tech, in turn creating their own heavily modified original products for reselling. Much of Rad's trademark characteristics are translated in-game via enemy types, behaviors and AC part schematics, all of which are revealed whilst playing through the grid. As obvious as it might be, this place isn't just memorable due to its visuals and layout. Who you meet, what you do and what sorts of threats and set pieces populate the level are all equally important factors, and here Rad's plethora of custom-built MT forces are a real standout. Some of these foes are functionally very different, and offer their own gimmick, while others amount to little more than fodder. Yet, all of them have their own rad color scheme slapped onto their craft, blending in very well with their surroundings. A sizable portion of these are original designs, like the toy box or clutch, while others are just general use, widely available mass-produced vehicles, namely the MT-TO-26, one of the weakest units in the game. To complement this, elite patrols are strengthened with modified Boss Tetrapod MTs, one of which has a reinforced physical shield.
This one is always a pain in the ass.
I think that's what's cool about enemy placements and diversity. Even if the game throws a lot of inherently weak units at you, certain combinations of enemy type will for sure make you have to think more on how to approach the encounter. These tetrapods exist to spike the difficulty curve and to make the Raven respect their surroundings a bit more, which I'm all up for. The same can be said about Rummy and his AC, Mad Stomp. They serve as the welcoming party for the Raven, showcasing exactly what kind of people Rad have in their ranks. While this fight isn't that hard at all, It serves as a very unorthodox early stepping stone into the rest of the level, functioning as foreshadowing for the fact the grid is going to be hostile towards any intruders.
Plus, his death throws are just delightful.
To cap off your incursion into the Doser territory, you'll be pitted against the Smart Cleaner, one of Rad's originals. This is all around a pretty great fight for the most part, definitely not a highlight when compared to other bosses in the game, but what it does nail are the thematic aspects of this last portion of the mission. This oversized mining equipment looking Roomba from hell throws molten rock at you and slides across the floor like it's playing air hockey. I love it. Its unique fight gimmick of having to stagger it by hitting weak spots isn't too engaging, but it is at the very least pretty different. And credit where it's due, the soundtrack once more elevates this moment with the song Unbreakable kicking everything into high gear.
Enough, tourist. It's been miserable knowing you, but I guess playing nice is a smart choice here. You want to go up top, right? Let me show you the way.
Chapter 2's whole continuity is one of the biggest aspects behind Grid 086's great resonance with me. Infiltrating the lower grid levels was a real treat, especially with how verticality and branching enhance the ride, but the fact this whole ecosystem is fleshed out not across 1, or 2, or 3 but 4 different missions is the nail in the metaphorical coffin. During a first playthrough, after successfully sending the hellish Roomba to the nearest scrapyard, Carla will agree to help you climb towards the upper levels in exchange for some cleanup services. Queue up Eliminate the Doser faction.
This is a no bullshit, get in, fuck everyone up, get out type of mission. Exactly my kind of job.
A complete palate cleanser from the tension roller coaster that was the previous assignment. This time around you're not fighting against Rad, but rather making up for their losses by defending them against another opportunistic Doser faction, the Junker Coyotes. The whole job takes place in the smaller last section of the previous level, just outside the Smart Cleaner gate, repurposing this whole area and allowing us to have more insight on who Carla is, how she operates and how she looks at her Rad associates, particularly her opinion on Rummy, something that already makes it worthwhile, given the perspective being shifted from targeting her as a foe to using her as an ally. And so the character and plot developments benefit massively from just this inclusion alone. Coming into Chapter 2 on a new Game Plus cycle, however, is a whole different beast. You'll have unlocked access to the Stop the Secret Data Breach mission, given you made specific decisions up until this point. Here Carla will request your help to stop several hacker drones that have breached into the grid's midsection, mostly around the area with the foundries. Yet again, another area of this environment is revisited with a different purpose in mind. This time around the clock is ticking, as you need to get this job done before the hack is finished. This mission is more complex than its previous relative, and its final stretch is where things get really heated and interesting. You see, if you chose to betray the Red Guns at the dam complex, then Iguazu will come after you.
Oh my god, seriously, this asshole again? Isn't he done complaining and bitching about as usual? Freelancer this, freelancer that. Fucking get a grip, mate.
Annoying as he might be, Iguazu is one of the lead characters of the game, and the way he's written requires him to not only be presented as a completely unlikable, irritating person, but also to have his plot points fleshed out on subsequent playthroughs and alternate timeline missions. This one in specific is one of the first of such instances, making it all the more memorable. This encounter also sees the both of you being interrupted by unknown elite forces, of which you have to take care either by working together or by backstabbing each other. The fact it takes place here, how the mission unravels from a simple connecting thread and side job, into a duel to the death turned straight up trial gauntlet is absolutely exciting. Although all these developments are new to the player, they are effectively part of Grid 086's wholly inclusive level design, extending its reach further beyond. These subsequent missions cleverly integrate segments of this larger hub, providing a great sense of continuity and place. The less explored parts of the grid are brought to the limelight, using them as center stage for these other important events of the game world to take part in. There's always a fine balance to be struck between over-repetition and tasteful repetition. One can completely throw off the pacing of the experience and ruin the whole thing because it might feel as a corner-cutting tool. On the other side of the spectrum, It can be smartly used as a way to convey permanence, enhance emotional responses, and even trick or surprise the player by slightly offsetting their expectations. In this case, it's definitely the latter. It's very obviously intentional. It seems the devs wanted to play around with our previous experience in this location, and make us look at it through a different lens by going through the ambush scenario. However you interpret or spin it, jumping around from mission to mission and reusing some material is also a great way to save some assets, so win-win for them there. One thing is for certain though, it's finally time to climb all the way to the top. As we wrap up our journey through Grid 086, it becomes increasingly evident that this level is more than just a backdrop for some missions and exposition. It's quite a carefully well-planned multi-stage semi-open world that manages to blend its depictions of scale, atmosphere, exploration, strategy, curiosity and themes very successfully. Ocean Crossing is our final send-off from this place. It's a very short mission, functioning mostly as a huge set piece that sets up a boss encounter, and the star of the show is once again freedom of choice when it comes to taking routes. Let's just say my playthroughs have never been the same again once I found out I could actually go below the bridge, and avoid all incoming orbital cannons with ease. Apart from that, what's really novel here is the incredibly stunning skyline, the exciting rush towards the boss arena and the introduction of the boss itself, the sea spider. I prefer this in favor of the smart cleaner by a long shot actually. Not only is it more intimidating, but it also poses a greater challenge for the most part. At this point in the game, we are just becoming aware that coral can actually be used to power a machine like this. Additionally, this is quite literally the last obstacle between the Raven and their ticket into the ice field, enhancing the whole mission with this feeling of closure that has been built up all throughout the chapter, which is now finally being paid off and earned. This conclusion feels almost cathartic in a way, having traversed the entire grid from the lowest levels, turning foes into allies, climbing up towards your objective and finally arriving at the destination is remarkably satisfying. It's very impressive how FromSoft managed to keep everything interesting and tightly packed together in this way, without anything overstaying its welcome. The grid isn't necessarily the only example of this kind of philosophy being applied to Armored Core 6's levels, but it's my personal favorite, hence why I wanted to talk about it. In fact, a lot of the locations in the game follow this exact same kind of structure, where there will be one slightly bigger mission that familiarizes the player with a new location, to then make several adjacent events take place there as well. Watchpoint Alpha and its depths are a prime candidate for this, as Ravens see themselves undertaking the impossible challenge of descending all the way past the third underground level. The twists and turns both in the plot and gameplay on offer mirror the grid's progression extremely well. In fact, it's basically the inverted path being taken. Whereas you climb from its lowest point up to its highest, descending through the depths is the exact opposite, starting all the way up in the surface, down into uncharted territory down below. While these missions in Chapter 4 might collectively form something as cohesive as those in Chapter 2, it's safe to say that there's nothing quite like Infiltrate Grid 086 in here. Despite that, these also display incredible mastery over environmental storytelling, and on how to build tension or intrigue all across the board. All the depths offer their unique flavor and brand of challenge. They build on top of one another, quite literally too. As with the grid, there's a sense of pushing forward towards uncovering the bigger picture, learning about the then and now, overcoming a progressively more complex problem. In fact, this location has even more missions that it hosts, incredibly varied missions at that too. Some of the most notorious include intercepting the Red Guns and coming face to face with Michigan, and being set up to fight against our buddy Rusty. The point is, Grid 086 is just one of many great concepts introduced in AC6, one that needs to be recaptured in future entries of the series, maybe even further explored and developed, because as it stands it makes up some of the most fun one can have in the game. Hopefully I managed to get my perspective across. If you weren't a fan of the grid, I encourage you to give it another shot. If not, well, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. I might just be able to cover something else you enjoy. Until then, thank you to all you Ravens for watching, and thank you to all my supporters. Stay boosting.